everyone! So for today's video, I'm going to be giving you guys two different tutorials, two different looks on how to use cream eyeshadow. You guys know this is a cream makeup positive channel, and I'm really excited to share with you guys how to use cream eyeshadows, how to make them work for you. It does not have to be complicated, so these two looks are going to be pretty stripped down. So first we're going to start with a really beginner, easy to work with formula and technique for you guys, a one and done shadow look that looks like you put in a lot more effort than you actually did. And then for my second look, I'm going to be sharing with you guys how I mix different cream eyeshadow textures. So like creams and liquids, sparkles. You guys know I love a wet looking sparkle, and I love that this look is both long wearing but also offers this really glossy appearance. So I hope that you guys enjoy it. I will leave all of the products that I used linked down below for you guys, and let's just jump in to the first tutorial. All right, so for the first look, and this is the first look that I would start with if you are a cream shadow beginner, I would just try a one and done eyeshadow look. We are going to be using only one shadow to give us a truly dimensional look. It's going to look like you took a lot more time to get the shadow on your eyes than you actually did. I think a key with any one and done eyeshadow look is not only the shade, but also the placement and the technique. Today I'm going to be using a staple, and I wanted to use this staple because I know that a lot of you have bought this. It is a product that I talk about a lot, and it is the Charlotte Tilbury Eyes to Mesmerize, specifically in the shade Oyster Pearl. The reason I really like to recommend this one for a one and done eyeshadow is that it is buildable, so you're able to get more depth in certain areas just by layering this one shadow. And also when you do sheer it out, it kind of brings out the warmth in the eyeshadow, which you can see just in here. It is a little bit more cool toned, so it almost looks like you have added another eyeshadow. And if you are looking for a perfect one and done eyeshadow, I would say that that is really key. Finding an eyeshadow that can kind of sheer out and it brings out another layer of dimension, or kind of brings out a different reflection or warmth. I think that is what makes an eyeshadow really work well for this technique. So here we have the pot. Number one, I do have concealer already on my eyes. Feel free to use eye primer if you would like. I like to just use my concealer because I think that it gives me a really seamless look since it is already under my eyes. You want to make any cream eyeshadow last a little bit longer. You can also go ahead and set your concealer now with just a little bit of translucent powder. Now I'm going to take this cream eyeshadow, and you can absolutely use your fingers. So I am going to use my finger for one eye just to give you guys an idea of how this will look. So just take some on your ring finger. The ring finger is great because it's actually the weakest finger, so you're not going to add too much pressure to the lid. And just right of your pupil, you're going to layer down that product. And you'll see why I say to start the product here in a second. But all you have to do is just like smooth it on over until you reach the edge of the eye. Now here is where I can typically just use a finger and just slowly build the product out past the pupil towards the inner corner, but I'm never going all the way in. And the reason why is that for me, I don't do that because I find that it can actually kind of close off my eye if I take the product all the way in here. So try to keep it a little bit further out, and just again, slowly press the product inwards a little bit. The reason I wanted to start it towards the pupil is that the majority of the pigment is going to be there, and you're not going to end up with too much product towards the inner portion of the eye. And then, again, just keeping this onto the lid. You can see right now, you could 100% just go out with this look the way it is. That is what is so beautiful about this shadow, is even with very little blending, the crease already kind of looks like there's a little bit of a different shadow going on because we've kind of concentrated the pigment here and sheared it out. It's already starting to look cohesive. But what I would recommend is going in with an eyeshadow brush. This is a Real Techniques shading brush, and just taking it right through the crease and slowly blending it a little bit upwards. You can feather out these edges over here. This formula is more of that classic moussey texture, so it's really easy to work with and very easy to blend. So another really great beginner favorite. But let me show you what I would do if I wanted to use a brush. So again, I would just take the same shading brush, and this is a little bit flatter but fluffier on the top. I always say, and I'll get more into this in the second tutorial, but if you are dealing with a little bit more of a dense formula, then you're going to want a denser brush to hold up to that formula. But because this is a relatively creamy emollient formula, using a brush like this is totally fine and one that I really like. Taking that on this half of the eye first. I do really like using my fingers because I just find that it gives me the most impact right away. But using a brush will give you the same look. You just have to layer a little bit more. And then just taking that excess onto the inner portion of the eye. Guys, that is really as simple as it is with a one and done eyeshadow look. You can add a little bit more dimension by taking just a touch more on the outer corners. And what I'll do is go in with the Pro 18 shadow brush from Sephora. It's a brush that I absolutely love and I will definitely be using in the next tutorial. It is a stiffer kind of pencil brush, so it's able to give us a lot of control while also being relatively fluffy for a pencil brush. It's kind of like a slightly fluffier pencil brush, but still has nice density. So again, if you want to add just a little bit more depth and dimension to like a one and done eyeshadow look, you don't need another eyeshadow necessarily if you have a formula that does build upon itself. So I'm just going to take a little bit and really build it up towards the lash line on the outer corner. Just pressing and diffusing. You can see already just that little bit has added this nice, pretty, rich dimension. Doing the same thing over here. And here are the eyes with just one eyeshadow, added a little bit of mascara. I love that you can see on the outer corners, it has this richness and this depth, but again, it's one shadow, not a ton of technique here. Cream eyeshadows definitely don't need to be complicated. But if you do want to get into more of a full-on look, add a little bit of sparkle, then let's jump on into the next look. Okay, so for this look, this is typically the kind of eyeshadow look that you guys see me wearing in all of my videos. It's very simple. I like to use a more long-wearing matte shadow into the crease, maybe a little bit of definition out on the outer edges, kind of like a very soft, kind of smoky wing kind of thing, and then a wet-looking glitter right on top. So I'm going to show you how I would do that with all cream products on my eyes. So I do have a host of different brushes that I could possibly use with this look. You can directly apply the shadows with a finger. I mean, please use your fingers if you are comfortable with your fingers. I love using my fingers, but I'm going to be using some brushes so you guys can get a better idea and more of like a detailed look at each step. So something that I think is really important with a look with a bunch of different kinds of textures, because we are going to be using a liquid as well as a cream. Remember, the denser the formula, the denser you want your brush. So the e.l.f. No Budge cream shadows are quite dense, and this is the matte shadow that we are going to be using all over the lid. So I'm going to pick out of the brushes that I really love a more dense brush to get the product onto the lid. This one from AOA is definitely a favorite. It is the E132 brush. I really like it because, again, it's dense, but it's a little bit more fluffy than, say, the Pro 18, which I like to do to like kind of deepen up certain areas, and I'll show you how I do that in a second. But we are going to be using the e.l.f. No Budge eyeshadow, and I love this shade Sand Dune. It is just such a gorgeous creamy beige that leans a little bit more cool toned. So you can take the product directly onto the brush into the pan, or you're also welcome to take a little bit out on the back of your hand and then dip in. That's especially helpful with a more pigmented formula, so never be afraid to go ahead and do that. I actually really love to take my transition shade like all the way up above the crease. I definitely have a decent amount of lid space from like my brows down to my lids, so I like to do a more diffused look. I think that that's what's flattering on me, but if you do prefer, you can keep this just specifically on the lid and don't go like too above the crease. But here's what I would typically do. So I'm going to add this transition shade into the crease and onto this half of the lid. Very similar to what we did before, and just blending that out. Now, I love doing this specifically because when you go in with a long wear matte shadow into the crease, you're not only setting the look up for success, you know, adding this transition is going to make everything look more blended, but you are also making everything last much longer. I have a ton of different options for this look. You can also go in with the Ulta matte liquid shadows. I absolutely love these. And please, if you guys have more questions after this video, please let me know what follow-up videos you'd like to see me do, because I absolutely love talking about cream eyeshadow, obviously. So that is basically all the blending that I need to do. And again, you can see I've left this area a bit blank, but we're going to have glitter on top of there, so it's really not going to be something you notice. Now, I could do two different things. I could go ahead and put the glitter on, or I could add a little bit of a smokiness on the outer corners. And I think just to give you guys a better idea of how to work with multiple colors, multiple formulas, I am going to go ahead and do that. Now, typically I would just add a glitter and then be on the way if it's like an everyday look. But let's go ahead and add one of these Ulta matte shadows. Now let's see what shade I want to go ahead with. I think let's go ahead with Vintage Beauty. You can see this is a new one, which is awesome. Nice to have a fresh makeup holy grail back in your collection. So this shade is really pretty. It's more of a deeper gray purple. So I'm just going to take it directly onto the outer corner. And I, again, put it on the back of your hand and onto the lid if you'd like to do that. Just taking that exactly where I want the most pigment and just pressing that in. You can start to blend that up into the crease as well. Typically what I'll do is I'll go in with a detail brush and start to work out a little bit of like a wing. And it's not a full-on wing, but it's more of just that little bit of shape. You see that difference? You can kind of just clean up those edges a little bit. And this is the Pro 18 from Sephora. This is why I love this brush, because it's really easy to kind of carve out this outer edge, and this kind of shape is what I really like with my eye looks. Again, it's a little bit more blown out, but you can certainly keep it closer to the lid if you don't want as much of a wing. But again, that's the kind of shape that I really like. And I'm going to go ahead, this actually has quite a bit of product on it, so I'll go ahead with a clean brush. The Pro 15 from Sephora is one that I love. It's a more flat brush, but it still has a nice fluffy edge. So I'm going to go ahead and kind of blend out these edges. And don't be afraid, you know, you can see that that was kind of blended out a little bit more. But just going back in with the Pro 18 that still has some residual product on it, you can very easily just wing that right back out. You can see that we have now worked with a liquid formula. We've gone back in with a cream formula. It is okay to work with liquids and work with creams within the same look. What's more important, in my opinion, is a good formula that likes to work well with other products. This is about the time I will go ahead in with my glitter. This is one of my favorite products that I've found this year, and it's the Glisten and Glow from Stila. This is the shade Kitten Kaleidoscope. I absolutely love this because it is a self-setting glitter that still looks really wet. And it does have a little bit more of a translucence than the typical Stila glitter shadows, and I think that that's what makes this look extra wet, and it just adds a different layer to these kinds of looks. If you aren't familiar with my channel, I love wet looking glitters. It's like, again, it's kind of like my signature go-to kind of look. Not signature in a way like I invented it, of course I didn't. It's more so like the look that I always love. So I'm taking the applicator straight onto the lid and just pressing. And I'm going to take this pretty far in here, focusing it where we haven't added that transition mostly, but then we will just, you know, start to take it out onto the middle of the lid as well. Now, even with just that, we have created such a gorgeous whole look. Like, this really pulls it together and adds that wet dimension. But what I'll do is just make sure that everything is nice and blended. So I like to pat this back in when I'm mixing these two textures. Just kind of pat that in. And in the crease and this kind of edge, I'll pat, pat, pat. And you can also just use your finger as well. And in any areas where you want to add more pigment, you can just take the applicator, go onto your finger, and just layer. And that, my friends, is, you know, typically the kind of cream eyeshadow look that I will do. To kind of finish up the look, I might go in with a little bit of a liner, but I think for today, I am going to kind of smooth out this edge over here a little bit, just kind of clean this up a touch, and then I will go into the Pro 18 shadow brush. This brush, I'm telling you, if you want the perfect brush for the lower lash line, look no further. I don't want anything too smoky, so I'm just going to use a little bit of the Sand Dune shade from e.l.f. Again, I can just go in the back of my hand, take off any excess, and just go ahead and run that along here. Now, something that I think is really important for me, doesn't have to, this might not be important to you, I really do not like to take my eyeshadow on the lower lash line all the way in. I find that if I take it all the way in here, it closes off my eyes and makes my eyes look a little bit more sunken. So I don't like to take it all the way in here. But just very lightly on the lower lash line will help to give you a more full effect there. Now I'm going to do my mascara on this side, and then you guys will be able to see the before and after. Okay, so I tightlined just a little bit on the outer corner with Turkish Delight from Beauty Pie. But here is the first eye done. You can see that before and after of, you know, my typical signature look. Let me do this eye and I'll be right back. And here, my friends, is the completed look. So those are two different looks that you guys can get with cream shadows. I will leave all of the products, all of the brushes, everything linked down below for you guys. I really hope this was helpful. If you want to see any follow-up videos on this topic, please let me know. But until then, I will leave my cream eyeshadow beginner's guide right over here for you guys in case you would like to check out kind of my overview on a bunch of different cream eyeshadow formulas so that you can find the right one for you. Thank you guys, as always, for being here, and I will see you in my next one.